Most men will never become dangerous, not because they lack talent, not because the system is rigged against them, not because luck never arrived at their door. They will never become dangerous because they allowed the world to scatter them, piece by piece, notification by notification, conversation by conversation, until the man who once had a fire inside him became a man who could barely hold a single thought for longer than 30 seconds. Machiavelli watched this happen in every court he studied. He watched brilliant men fall, not to smarter enemies, not to stronger armies, but to their own divided attention. He wrote that a prince who tries to pursue everything pursues nothing. And that observation, written 500 years ago, has never been more true than it is today. Because today, the war against your focus is not fought with weapons. It is fought with algorithms, notifications, outrage cycles, and 1,000 engineered distractions, all competing for the one thing your enemies need you to surrender: your attention. Lose that, and you lose everything, because a man without focus is a man without power, and a man without power is not a man who is living. He is a man who is being lived. This is not a motivational speech. Motivation is for men who need permission to act. This is a map, a cold, precise, Machiavellian map of how to become so dangerously focused that the world has no framework left to stop you. Here is the lie you were told. You were told that being busy is the same as being productive, that doing many things means you are going somewhere, that the man who responds fastest, moves most, and stays most connected is the man who wins. Every productivity system, every app, every hustle culture sermon was built on this lie. And millions of men swallowed it whole. They became busy, impressively, exhaustingly, visibly busy, and they went nowhere. Because busyness is not focus. Busyness is its enemy. Machiavelli never celebrated the busy man. He studied the effective one, the man who moved rarely but decisively, who spoke little but precisely, who pursued one outcome with the cold obsession of a predator that has already chosen its target and has no interest in anything else. That man did not need more hours. He needed fewer distractions. The most dangerous men in history were not the most energetic. They were the most concentrated. Their power did not come from doing more. It came from refusing to do anything that did not serve the one thing they were building. That is what this video is about. Not doing more. Becoming more by doing less, with greater precision, greater silence, and greater ruthlessness than the men around you are willing to endure. Let us begin. Rule 1. Your attention is the war. Everything else is theater. The distracted man thinks his problem is time. He says he does not have enough hours. He wishes the day were longer. He blames his schedule, his obligations, his circumstances. The focused man knows the truth. Time is not the problem. Attention is. You have the same 24 hours as every man who has ever built an empire. The difference is not the hours. It is what those hours were pointed at. Machiavelli wrote that the man who does not control his own mind will always be controlled by another's. This was not poetry. It was observation. He watched men of enormous potential become instruments of other people's agendas simply because they never decided what their own agenda was. A man without a decided focus becomes a resource for whoever decides theirs first. I know a man who worked 70 hours a week for 8 years. He was exhausted, respected, and broke. Not financially broke, directionally broke. 8 years of effort pointed in 17 different directions, and he had built nothing he could call his own. Everything he produced belonged to someone else's vision because he had never committed fully to his own. The focused man does not ask how to manage his time. He asks what single outcome his time is in service of. Once that question is answered, every hour either serves that outcome or is cut. Your attention is the war. Stop fighting on other people's battlefields. One man scattered his energy across a dozen goals and called it ambition. One man pointed everything at a single target and called it focus. Only one of them hit anything. Rule 2. Eliminate before you optimize. Most men try to become more productive without first becoming more ruthless. They build systems, buy planners, download apps, wake up earlier. They optimize the machine without asking whether the machine is pointed in the right direction. This is not strategy. This is sophisticated procrastination. Machiavelli was not a man who added. He was a man who subtracted. He understood that power does not accumulate through addition. It concentrates through elimination. A prince who carries every alliance, every obligation, every loyalty equally distributed becomes weak precisely because of that distribution. Strength is not spread, it is focused. Before you optimize a single habit, conduct an elimination audit. Look at your calendar for the last 30 days. Look at how your hours were actually spent, not how you intended to spend them. And ask one question about each item. Does this move me toward the one outcome I am building, or does it not? If it does not, it is not a lower priority. It is an enemy. Treat it accordingly. I watched someone spend 2 years optimizing their morning routine while their primary skill atrophied from neglect. Every morning they woke up at 5, journaled, meditated, exercised. All of it was good. None of it was the thing. The thing was being starved while the rituals around it were being perfected. Machiavelli would have looked at that and seen a man performing the appearance of discipline while avoiding the substance of it. Eliminate first. Optimize what remains. One man refined everything he did and moved faster in circles. One man removed everything that was not the target and moved slower toward it in a straight line. Only one arrived. Rule 3. Single target obsession. The rest is noise. The world will give you 1,000 reasons to divide your focus. Opportunities, emergencies, relationships, obligations, interesting ideas, compelling detours. All of them will present themselves as important. Most of them are not. Most of them are tests, and passing the test means refusing them. Machiavelli wrote that the man who hesitates between 2 paths will find himself abandoned on both. This is not a metaphor. It is a mechanical observation about how attention works. Split focus does not produce 2 half results. It produces 2 failures, each one blaming the other for the outcome. The single target obsession is not comfortable. People around you will call it imbalance. They will say you are missing out. They will tell you that a well-rounded life is the goal. A well-rounded life is the goal of a man who has accepted mediocrity and decorated it with philosophy. The men who built things that lasted were not well-rounded. They were dangerously lopsided, obsessive in their focus, ruthless in their refusals, and completely indifferent to the social cost of saying no to everything that was not the mission. Study their lives without the romantic filter, and you will find men who neglected things the world told them were important. Because they had decided what was actually important, and they were unwilling to negotiate that decision with anyone. Find your single target, name it precisely, write it where you see it every day, and then treat everything else in your life as subordinate to it, not temporarily, permanently, until the target is destroyed and a new one must be named. One man pursued balance and achieved average results in several areas. One man pursued mastery in one and became untouchable in it. Balance is the consolation prize of unfocused men. Rule 4. Silence your inputs, or your inputs will silence you. Here is something nobody says directly enough. The content you consume is not neutral. It is not entertainment. It is not background noise. It is instruction. It is programming. And it is building a version of you whether you are conscious of it or not. Every video you watch, every conversation you absorb, every feed you scroll, every podcast you half listen to while doing something else is feeding a direction into your subconscious, and your subconscious will follow that direction without asking your permission. Machiavelli understood that the man who controls what a prince sees, hears, and reads controls the prince. This is why powerful men throughout history controlled their information environment with the same ferocity they applied to controlling territory. Because information is territory, mental territory, and if you are not deciding what occupies it, someone else is. Audit your inputs with the same ruthlessness you apply to your time. Ask what each one is producing in you. Is this sharpening my thinking or dulling it? Is this advancing my understanding of the thing I am building or distracting me from it? I know someone who consumed 10 hours of content a week, all of it loosely related to their field, none of it specifically aimed at their current problem. They felt informed. They were not advancing. They were marinating in general knowledge while the specific knowledge their mission demanded went unstudied. Cut inputs that do not serve the mission, not temporarily. Cut them permanently and do not apologize for it. The focused man is not less informed. He is more precisely informed about the one thing that matters right now. One man consumed broadly and knew a little about everything. One man consumed precisely and knew everything about the one thing. Only one of them was dangerous. Rule 5. Guard your mental state like a military installation. Your emotional state is not separate from your performance. It is your performance. A man in chaos produces chaotic work. A man in clarity produces precise work. A man under constant emotional siege produces nothing but reactions, and reactions are not results. Machiavelli wrote that the wise general does not allow the enemy to choose the terrain of battle. The man who allows his environment to dictate his mental state is doing exactly that. He is letting the enemy choose the ground. Your mental state must be defended. Not occasionally, not when things get difficult, every day. As a non-negotiable act of strategic self-preservation. This means controlling your mornings before the world can reach you. It means building rituals not for their own sake, but as fortifications against the noise that will try to occupy your mind from the moment you open your eyes. It means understanding that every person, every notification, every obligation that enters your awareness is requesting a piece of your mental bandwidth, and bandwidth is finite. The general does not open the gates of his fortress to every visitor who arrives. He screens them. He determines what is allowed in based on whether it serves the defense of what is inside. Treat your mental state the same way. Screen everything. Allow in only what contributes to the mission. Everything else waits outside. One man reacted to whatever mood the world handed him and called it authenticity. One man protected his mental state with discipline and called it strategy. One of them was being controlled. One of them was doing the controlling. Rule 6. Deep work is the only work that compounds most men work. Few men do work that compounds. There is a difference between hours spent and value created. A man can spend 10 hours in motion and produce nothing that accumulates. Another man can spend 3 hours in complete, unbroken focus and produce something that builds on itself indefinitely. The first man is exhausted and stagnant. The second man is rested and compounding. This is not a paradox. It is the mechanics of how deep work actually functions. Machiavelli observed that the prince who applied concentrated force to a single point in the enemy line would break through where the prince who spread force evenly would be absorbed and neutralized. This principle does not only apply to military strategy. It applies to every form of value creation that exists. Concentrated effort breaks through. Distributed effort gets absorbed. This means you must build unbreakable blocks of time where the single target receives your complete, undivided, uninterrupted attention. No notifications, no ambient noise, no half attention. Full engagement with nothing else existing for the duration. 3 hours of this will outperform 8 hours of fragmented effort every single time, not occasionally, structurally, because the compound effect only activates during deep work. Everything else just maintains. The world will tell you this is unrealistic, that you have obligations, interruptions, responsibilities that cannot be blocked. This is true for men who have accepted the world's terms. The focused man does not accept the world's terms. He sets his own. One man worked constantly and produced constantly mediocre results. One man worked rarely but deeply and produced results that accumulated beyond what effort alone could explain. Depth is the multiplier. Everything else is arithmetic. Rule 7. Protect your energy or watch your focus disappear. Focus is not purely mental, it is physical. A man who is sleep-deprived cannot focus regardless of his intention. A man who is eating poorly is running a degraded processor. A man who is in chronic physical chaos is fighting a two-front war when he should be fighting one. Machiavelli wrote that the body is the instrument of the will. A general who allows his instrument to deteriorate will find that his finest strategy cannot be executed because the mechanism of execution is compromised. This is not wellness culture. This is not self-care theater. This is operational maintenance of the weapon you are using to conduct war. Sleep is not laziness, it is cognitive sharpening. The man who brags about sleeping 4 hours is bragging about operating at 60% capacity while calling it efficiency. He is performing sacrifice and paying for it with his actual performance. Eat, sleep, and move in ways that sustain the instrument, not to look a certain way, not to signal discipline, but because the mission requires a sharp weapon, and a dull one is worse than no weapon at all. I watched someone destroy 18 months of focused work because they ignored physical maintenance until the system broke down completely. Adrenal fatigue, immune collapse, mental fog so thick they could not sustain 30 minutes of quality thinking. All of it preventable, none of it dramatic enough to take seriously until it became impossible to ignore. The general maintains his army in the field. He does not wait until it collapses to notice it needed maintenance. One man sacrificed his body for his goals and eventually had neither. One man maintained his body as a tool for his goals and arrived with both. The mission requires the soldier alive. Everything so far has been foundation. The principles that clear the ground, remove the interference, and prepare the instrument for what comes next. But the rules that follow are where dangerous focus becomes something different. Something that most men will read and immediately call extreme. Something that will make the comfortable stop watching and the serious lean forward. Because from here, we are not talking about productivity. We are talking about the psychological transformation required to become a man who cannot be distracted, cannot be deterred, and cannot be stopped. These are the rules that separate the men who understand focus from the men who have made it their weapon. Rule 8. Make peace with being misunderstood. When you become focused, you will become strange to the people around you. You will decline invitations that once felt mandatory. You will end conversations that once felt comfortable. You will stop participating in the social theater that consumes most men's evenings and weekends, and the people around you will notice. They will have opinions. They will share those opinions. Let them. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who needs to be understood by everyone will be controlled by everyone. The moment you require social approval for your direction, you have handed the steering wheel to a committee. Committees do not build empires, they prevent them. The misunderstanding is not a side effect of your focus, it is evidence of it. Because a man operating on a different timeline, with different priorities, in service of a different vision, will naturally be unreadable to those who share none of those things. They will say you have changed. They are right. They will say you are obsessed. Correct. They will say you need to find balance. This is where you smile and say nothing. Your direction does not require their comprehension. It requires your execution. I know someone who lost most of their social circle in the 18 months it took to build the thing they were building. It was quiet, it was uncomfortable, and it was the best thing that happened to them. Not because isolation is noble, but because the circle they lost was one that was only comfortable when they were operating below potential. Make peace with being misunderstood. It is the tax on operating above the average. One man shaped his focus around what others would understand and remained explainable and average. One man shaped it around what he was building and became extraordinary and unreadable. Mystery is not a side effect of power, it is a component of it. Rule 9. Use boredom as a weapon. The focused man is not afraid of boredom. He has weaponized it. Here is something the distraction economy will never tell you. Boredom is where strategy forms. Boredom is where the subconscious processes without interference. Boredom is where the best ideas, the clearest decisions, and the most precise paths forward emerge if you allow them to. But most men cannot sit with boredom for 30 seconds before reaching for a device. And in doing so, they interrupt the very cognitive process that would give them their next breakthrough. Machiavelli spent years in exile, years of enforced stillness after being removed from power, and it was during that stillness that he produced The Prince, the document that has influenced power strategy for 5 centuries. His most powerful thinking emerged not from the height of his activity, but from the depth of his enforced quiet. Stillness is not the absence of thinking. It is where the highest quality thinking lives. Build deliberate periods of nothing into your days. Not meditation with instructions, not structured reflection with prompts. Nothing. Sit with the discomfort of an unoccupied mind and let it work without direction. The man who can tolerate boredom without reaching for stimulation is operating at a frequency the distracted masses cannot access. He is thinking at a depth they will never reach because they will never hold still long enough to get there. Boredom is not empty. It is the most fertile cognitive state available to you. The distraction economy wants you to never discover this. Because a man who can think deeply without external stimulation is a man they cannot sell anything to. One man filled every silence with noise and never heard the signal beneath it. One man sat in silence until the signal became clear. The strategy always lives below the noise. You have to stop the noise to hear it. Rule 10. Become immune to urgency. The world manufactures urgency, constantly, professionally, at scale. Every notification is urgent. Every news cycle is urgent. Every request that arrives in your inbox is framed as urgent. Every person who needs something from you presents that need as urgent. None of it is. Almost none of the things the world presents as urgent are actually important, and almost none of the things that are actually important will ever present themselves as urgent. They will arrive quietly, without fanfare, easily ignored, because they are long-term and the world is calibrated for short-term. Machiavelli observed that the prince who reacted to every provocation was a prince who was being directed by his enemies. Urgency is the mechanism of that direction. It creates the appearance of necessity, bypasses rational evaluation, and produces reactions disguised as decisions. The focused man has built immunity to urgency, not by becoming slow, by becoming discerning. He asks one question before responding to anything presented as urgent. Is this actually important, or does it merely feel important because of how it was framed? Most urgent things dissolve under that question. The ones that do not are worth his attention. The ones that do were never worth it at all. Build a delay into every response. 48 hours before answering anything that is not a genuine emergency. In those 48 hours, you will discover that most urgency was manufactured to produce your compliance. The thing that seemed critical on Monday is frequently irrelevant by Wednesday. Urgency is a leash. Discernment is how you remove it. One man responded to everything immediately and spent his life serving other people's priorities. One man responded deliberately and spent his life serving his own. The urgent man is always busy. The focused man is always moving. 5 years from now, one of 2 men exists. The first man is still scattered, still busy, still moving constantly in the comfortable direction of whatever demands his attention loudest. He has accumulated years of effort that have produced no compound effect because none of it was concentrated long enough to build momentum. He is not where he hoped to be, and every year the gap between where he is and where he intended to go grows wider and quieter. He has stopped talking about what he is going to do. He is not sure he remembers what it was. The second man is dangerous, not because he worked harder. He did not. Not because he got lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. He is dangerous because 5 years ago he made a decision that most men are not willing to make. He decided what the target was, and he refused to be moved from it by anything that did not serve it. He cut what needed to be cut. He protected what needed to be protected. He sat in the discomfort of being misunderstood, of boredom, of delayed gratification. He let the noise of the world pass around him while he remained fixed on the one thing. And now, the one thing is built. And because it is built, he has options that the first man does not. He has leverage the first man cannot access. He has peace that has nothing to do with acceptance and everything to do with having built something real. Here is what most men miss about this second future. It is available. Not to the most talented, not to the most gifted, to the most focused. Focus is a decision, one you can make right now, one that costs nothing except the distractions you have been allowing to cost you everything. The gap between these two men is not ability. It is not circumstance. It is not luck. It is a single committed decision to become dangerously, ruthlessly, irreversibly focused. And that decision is sitting in front of you right now. You did not make it through this entire script by accident. Something in you recognized this truth before the first rule was finished. Something in you already knew that your scattered attention was the source of your stagnation. You just needed someone to say it without apology. Now say it yourself. Drop in the comments right now. I am the target. Nothing else exists. Say it like you mean it, because the man who means it has already begun the process of becoming dangerous. And do not stop here. The next video goes deeper into the specific Machiavellian tactics for eliminating the people and patterns that are keeping you scattered, where we name exactly what is stealing your focus and show you how to destroy it without hesitation, without guilt, and without looking back. The focused man is rare, and the rare man is the dangerous one. The war for your attention has already begun. The only question is whether you are fighting it.